say my life is like a movie, there are sequels to the shit. Haters try to do me, try to put me in the ditch. You know I make moves, real niggas in the streets, trying to get this bread so my whole hood can eat. A lot of lame niggas say they true to the game, claiming that they real, wanna stand, dropping names. The troll.
They wanted me to spit reality rap.
Problem is, what the problem is,
whatever that fucking mean. Yeah.
Let's go.
Fuck you niggas and I mean that. You want war, bitch, I bring that. Real niggas dressing all black. I'll put your life in the past. All you lames ain't gon' last. Put that dumb shit in the trash. I be all out in the jungle while them gorillas even when they spaz. I was boosting them was back out. Run all up in your stash house. Tell you niggas kick the cash out. A 45 on your ass. A lot of y'all dudes is acting. Keep on saying that y'all trapping. Put you right up on the news channel 45 asking what happened. Big nigga and I'm husky. I dare you niggas try to touch me. So official like the ref, I got some real niggas that'll leave you dusty. I ain't never had nothing. Making something out of nothing. Out here grinding. Streets know I'm a go-getter. I can never be a whole nigga. Real facts, you's a whole nigga. Catch the boy in the cup. Watch the pot bubble up. Profit going double up. Really never gave a fuck. My whole hood really bout that. Cross the line, then we off black. Kill a nigga when it's off black. Smoke you chumps like some gas. My father never really fuck with me. None of you niggas can't fuck with me. Say it twice and you remember me. None of y'all can't fuck with me. So high of life like I just lost the molly. Wait for a young dumb ass nigga to try me. Giving them shots to the face of the body. Guns like a boxer, man, shots to the body. I done did a lot of dumb shit. A lot of beat a hater up type shit. I got that shit straight from high, knock a nigga out. I sold 15s of that musty. It was loud, it was crunchy. That's when housing came and rushed me. Came around every corner, had me on the ground. That's when they cuffed me. Had to switch the game up. Started capping up for slugs. I'm getting money, nigga, what?
What you gon' do now? Hope you're ready, cause I'm really about to put it down. Girl, you know that I will never disrespect you. We love tomorrow, but tonight I wanna spank you. That ass count, gotta make it last. Girl, I'm so I'ma beat it up. Hate on me, but no. Try to say stop when the beat say go. There you go again, that voice is watch him make your girlfriend go. Come on. You've been waiting patiently, wondering when and where I be. It's the cousin ruckus in the industry, making it so I she can't sleep.
Shut that shit down.
I'm so tired of it. Yeah, you need to stop playing dirty. Yeah, she deserves the best. And if you can't give it to her, then why hold on to her? It's not fair. Don't love her, then you leave that girl alone. You keep playing with her. Shut that shit down. Gotta be my brother's keeper. If you don't love her, then you leave that girl alone. You keep playing with her. Shut that shit down. Heartbreak, heartache, that's what makes the love go round, round. Before she gets to acting crazy, stop calling that girl your baby. Yeah. If you know you ain't ready, quit acting like you ready. If you know you ain't want it, quit acting like you want it. You need to let her go, let her go. You need to let her go, let her go. You need to let her go, let her go. You need to let her go. I'm trying to be my brother's keeper. If you don't love her, then you leave that girl alone. You keep playing with her. Shut that shit down. I'm trying to be my brother's keeper. If you don't love her, then you leave that girl alone. You keep playing with her. Shut that shit all the way down, 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 down. If you know you don't love her, shut her down, 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 down. If you know you don't wanna, shut her down, 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 down.
I need you to take heed, man. This is your warning. If you're listening,
Let me hear you say, oh, you need to leave her. You need to leave her alone. You need to leave her. You need to leave her alone. You need to leave her. Why keep lying to that girl? Messing up her world. Making promises she can't keep. You need to set her free. Why keep lying to that girl? Messing up her world. Making promises she can't keep. You need to set her free. Why keep lying to that girl? Messing up her world.
Let's go.
Making promises she can't keep.
Yo, let's
You
go.
need to set her free.
Hey.
Lying to that girl.
One time.
Messing up her world. Making promises she can't keep. You need to set her free. Keep playing with her.
Woo! Yes, sir. Dream Team, what's going on?
You keep playing.
Shout out to the Dream Team, to the best team in the land. What's going on? How y'all doing out there? What's going on? What's going on? Shit, there's a lot of people live tonight. There's a lot of people live tonight. Lord, 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 Lordy B. So let me go ahead and put it down real quick. If you want to donate to the channel, there's a little box with a $ in it. It's called the Super Chat. Please by all means donate to the Super Chat. If you want to donate to me, you can by hitting me at official or $ OfficialDanaJay on Cash App. Hold on. I don't know why. Hold on. I'm live, bro. Where you at?
At the hospital. About to leave.
What's going on?
You gone.
What?
You gone.
Tell me you joking, bro.
I'm not joking.
What happened? I mean, like what happened?
I don't know. I got here a little after 8, and his wife was here, Tiger, his sister, and lady Pastor Felicia Wallace. So I want the nigga, you know, he made a transition.
So he was gone when you got there.
Yeah.
So how long? Like, yo, hold on. Yo. So they took him off of life support at 6,
Mm-hmm.
and when you got there, he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So where you at now?
He's still in the work.
Is everybody in the room?
Everybody gone. I'm outside.
You outside the hospital or you in the room or outside the room?
I'm outside the house. I'm outside the hospital.
So are they letting anybody else up to see him?
I was up there. Everybody left. They about to do what they about to do.
Nah, yo. Nah, yo. Nah. Nah, yo. Nah, yo. Yo, just tell me you joking, bro.
So I'm not joking, yo. He's gone. David's gone, yo.
Yo, this make you just yo. Nah, yo.
He's gone, man.
So, what Tiger say?
What not nigga could say?
So did he look happy or what? Like, did he look like he was out of his misery? Like, what's going on?
I mean, Tiger, he looked hurt, but, he wasn't crying or nothing.
Now, how did David look? I don't know. It might be time for me to come home, bro.
His wife was there, was crying over him.
That's too many of y'all that we losing, bro. And I don't understand why. Ain't none of this happened when I was home, bro. And the minute I leave, everything start going downhill, bro. Like, what's going on up there?
I don't know, man.
Yo, I'm not playing for the funeral, bro. I can't do it. I'm all played out. I'm not playing for the musical. I'm not doing none of that. Damn, boy, you caught me right before my live, too. I was just coming on. So did they have him like straight, like but they put what was that kid thing that the nurse was talking about?
The care thing was, once they take the breathing tube and stuff off, then he'll pass peacefully.
How the fuck is that peacefully, bro? So was Pop there?
Uh,
So was anybody? Was a Pop there? Was anybody else there?
no, everybody her name was there. She said the people that she was expecting to come didn't show up.
Like who?
I don't know.
Cause I'm about to press them.
I guess.
Cause I'm about to press them.
I don't know. I don't know. She said she put it out there. I guess for his family or whatever, or whoever she reached out to be there.
Man, I'm all the way in the A, bro. What more can I do?
Yeah. Oh, and Jay Keys is there too. Jay, you want to play keys for Patrick?
Yeah. Oh, so he can?
Yeah, he's there.
What did he say?
He was sad.
Patrick ain't come?
No.
He probably had to work. I gotta figure something out. Too many of y'all leaving, shorty. And y'all don't gotta go.
37 years young.
Right. Damn, yo. Not real, bro. It's like this is the worst news that I expect to have, yo. I don't feel like doing nothing. So you on your way home?
Yeah, I'm waiting my lip to get.
Yo, be careful, shorty. Yo, call me when you get in the house. I love you, dummy.
Love you too, man. I got you.
All right. Oh, goddamn. You don't expect to hear that. Oh, shit! Man. Fuck. Let's go. Hold on, y'all. Where you at?
I'm about to leave the hospital. Leaving the hospital now.
You on the other side?
Huh?
You on the other side of the hospital?
No, I'm right here in the front of the hospital. We just leave. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. Oh, you can't even talk. I know.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Hey, Dana.
Yo.
Bro, love you, yo. Let me call you as soon as I get to the crib.
Love you back, dummy.
All right, bet.
All right. Well, not to keep y'all waiting, man. We're going to try to push through this. I'm not in the right frame of mind right now. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not in the right frame of mind. I am going to say this. I'm going to try to get through as much of this as I can. But I'm going to say this. Yo, I'm to the point now where I'm just tired of the bullshit. And niggas go live and shit talking about this and showing my pictures, showing videos or whatever. Yo, check this out. Yo, if you don't fuck with me, stay the fuck away from me. That go for anybody. That's just how I'm current now. Life too short. And I don't got time to be carrying dead weight. So if you don't fuck with me, stay the fuck away from me. That go for my channel. Any of my channels. I'm not going to be mad. I'm just going to keep it a buck. Because I don't got time to be sitting up here babying motherfuckers. I don't got time to be sitting up here, doing this and doing that. No. My little bro just left. Like my right hand. Left. I don't care no more. I'm at a place where I'm questioning God now. So whatever happens, happens. I don't understand this. I don't understand this at all. And for me to be at a place where I'm questioning God is serious. It's real serious. I know God is real. I know who holds my hand. I know who guides my path. But what I don't understand is so many fucked up ass people out here. And they still here. But the good folks are leaving. Makes me wonder, am I next? But I live every day like it's golden. I'm going to say this. People need to stop putting me in their organic circles that they create. You won't catch me nowhere where I'm not getting a check off of it. Unless I want to be there. If it ain't paying me, I ain't there. I ain't coming. I've helped a lot of people along the way and got shitted on in return. I ain't helping nobody else. I'd rather have a chat full of 80 people and I know who them 80 people are versus a chat full of 4,000 people and don't know people's agendas. That's where it's at with me. So, I keep it real. I keep God first, but right now I'm questioning God. Because I don't understand. All of the young guns leaving here. Why? That's all I want to know. Why? I'm going to have a mod meeting sometime this week. I'm going to be shifting some mods up. I expect for a great fall away to happen. I'm still going to keep going. I'm still going to be me. One thing I don't do is tell people who they can rock with and who they don't rock with. But I will say this. If you're rocking with somebody who don't rock with me, you can't rock with me. You can't tell me you fuck with me, but you rock with people who has shown you that they hate me. Can't do that. It's either you fuck with me or you don't. Plain and simple. And if you rock with me, you ain't gonna rock with nobody who's against me. So I ain't trying to hear that lukewarm stuff like, oh no, oh we rocking with this, we doing that. No. You ain't doing that. Not in 23. So if you rock with people that don't rock with me, stay with them. I wish you well. But I don't give a fuck no more. I wish you well. And I don't care who it is. Hey, Miss Shirley. And I don't care who it is. Just know I see everything. I see every chat. I see what's going on. And when I'm not there, I'm still there. So don't think I don't see what's going on. Don't think I don't know who I send links to and who come and who don't. Don't think I'm not watching. And no, I don't need nobody being a cheerleader for me. That's not what this is about. This is about putting shit in order on the right path. And I mean it. If you don't rock with me, don't rock with none of me. Stop. My content, don't rock with none of my stuff. Anything that got something to do with me, if you don't rock with me, do not touch none of my stuff. I don't care who it is. If I rock with you, then I'm going to rock your content. That's all. But we're going to try to jump into this. I'm going to try to jump into this. I'm going to do as much as I can. But if I feel like I can't do it no more, then I'm going to just cut this joint short. So, first things first, we talked about Adnan. We started talking about him. I'm going to show a video today. But before I do that, I do want to jump into some real stuff before I show any videos and do anything of that. I'm going to say you can see where Adnan's case was mirrored by the R. Kelly case. Or should I say the R. Kelly case was mirrored? No, Adnan's case was mirrored because they took pieces from what they did to Adnan and used it on Rob. I do have an update in Adnan's case. This is hard. This is hard. I do have an update. Man, I'm not trying to. I do have an update. Oh, Jesus. We're in trouble. Biden and McCarthy, debt ceiling bill passes the House and will head to the Senate. Jesus Christ. All right. Let's go here, man. Let's go here. Because some things got to be said and shown. So let's go there. Adnan Syed, subject of the Chain podcast, has been reconvicted in a Maryland court. And this was on March 29th, 2023. So they reconvicted him on March 29th, 2023. It says a Maryland appeals court on Tuesday reconvicted Adnan Syed of the 1999 murder of his ex-girlfriend, a case that drew attention after an audio serial cast doubt on his conviction. After an investigation, wait a minute, I'm going to stop, and we will be going over serial. We will be doing the whole season one day at a time. Because people need to understand what's going on and the way they're going to get you or the way they're going to try to get you. So hold on. After an investigation identified problems in the case, a circuit court judge last year overturned Syed's conviction for killing Hae Min Lee and ordered his release. He spent more than 20 years in prison. The judge left it up to the king to decide whether to retry him, and they decided to drop the case. Stop. The judge left it up to who? The king. I didn't know that the U.S. had kings and queens. The only place that have kings and queens is where? England, right? So if England don't rule the United States, why did the judge leave it up to the king? Can somebody make this make sense? Why did the judge leave it up to the king to decide whether to retry him, and they decided to drop the case? Nobody want to talk about the misconception of what people really thought the United States was. On Tuesday, the Maryland Court of Appeals Committee, in its 2-1 decision, ordered a rehearing of the case, saying the court violated the right of the victim's family to attend a decisive hearing in the case. I broke that down to y'all yesterday, how he did attend, just not in person. And people, and technically her brother should be happy that he didn't appear in person, because he could have got charged in person for showing up in the wrong form. We'll talk about that another day. This court has the power and obligation to remedy these violations, as long as we can do so without violating Mr. Syed's right not to be subjected to double threats. The committee said in its decision, as a result, the chamber's ruling overturned Mr. Syed's conviction, resulting in the reinstatement of the original convictions and sentence. The statement said, The commission did not specifically order Syed to be returned to prison, but gave 2 months to authorize its decision to give the parties time to assess how to proceed. Syed maintained that he was innocent and did not kill Hae-Min Lee, who was 18 when she was strangled and buried in Baltimore Lincoln Park. The podcast, the series produced by Chicago public radio station WBEZ, brought the issue to national attention in 1994. Al Syed's lawyer said that he is still at large and that the final decision is not related to Al Syed's innocence, but rather the judicial process. The attorney said Syed's team will seek a review in Maryland Supreme Court. Pay attention. Syed's team will seek a review in Maryland Supreme Court. The Maryland Court of Appeals reinstated Adnan's conviction, not because the motion for eviction was flawed, but because Miss Lee's brother did not appear in person. At the facilitator's hearing, Syed's attorney, Erica Suter told Reuters, "There's no reason to re-dramatize Adnan by returning him to convicted criminal status. Last September, the prosecution filed a motion to overturn the conviction after conducting a year-long investigation with a public defender representing Syed. Baltimore Circuit Judge Melissa Finn later ordered Syed's release from prison where he was serving a life sentence." But there's an update. And the update goes like this. Maryland's highest court prevents reinstatement of Adnan Syed's conviction in serial podcast case. Maryland Supreme Court on Thursday blocked the reinstatement of Adnan Syed's murder conviction while it decides whether to hear his appeal in the long-running Twisted Tale. Syed served more than 20 years in prison for the murder of his girlfriend, Hae-Min Lee, before prosecutors dropped all charges last September and Syed was released, years after the case was the focus of the serial podcast. Prosecutors said they found new suspects and unreliable evidence had been used at Syed's trial. Syed has remained free, but the case has grown even trickier. In February, the victim's brother appealed the conviction being vacated. The brother said he hadn't been given adequate notice of a court hearing, and he asked an appeals court to reverse the reversal and do the hearing over again to determine whether the conviction should be reversed again. What? In March, a state appellate court reinstated Syed's conviction after ruling a lower court had violated the rights of Lee's brother, young Lee, to attend the hearing. The victim's family wants to have another hearing about whether to vacate the conviction. On Wednesday, Syed asked the state's highest court to review that decision. He sought an evaluation of several factors in the case, including young Lee's allegations about receiving enough notice. Syed's innocence is not at issue, but his rights as a defendant and freedom as an exoneree are directly impacted by the appellate court of Maryland's decision, Syed's attorney, Erica Suter, said in a statement. Thursday's order stays the reinstatement while Syed's petition is pending and throughout any potential appeal process. If the court decides to hear his case, Lee's brother and Attorney General office agreed to the stay. Justice Shirley Watts wrote in the order, Syed is grateful that the victim's representatives and Attorney General have consented to the stay. The Maryland Office of the Public Defender said in a statement Wednesday, reincarcerating Adnan will be devastating for him and his family and would be an affront to justice. David Sanford, An attorney for the Lee family said in an email statement Friday that Supreme Court did the right thing, adding, the ultimate issues in this case are yet to be decided. So what the state of Maryland tried to do, they tried to convict him on a slick note because they wanted to send him back. Didn't know that people was watching. Hey, Miss V. White. Right, Willie. Didn't know that people was watching and was going to make a fuss about it. So, if you look at that, you got to take a look at this. And I'm going to pull it up. And not knowing the truth. So we're going to pull up Pastor Keith Williams. Pastor Keith Williams. And it starts off by this. The court, it's just audio, correct? It's a video. Mr. Canning says it's a video. The court, I thought we were just playing audio. Ms. Geddes, there's no reason in the government's view, there's no reason to play the video. Watch this. They didn't want, as I said, they didn't want Canning to play no videos to help Rob. The court said it's just audio, correct? Canning said it's a video. The court, I thought we were just playing audio. Ms. Geddes, there's no reason in the government's view, there's no reason to play the video. She saw video and audio, Mr. Canning said. The court said, can I ask a question over at the side? We don't need the reporter. What do you have to hide if you don't need a reporter, but you want to ask questions? Discussion off the record. But if you let the mother folks tell it, they never had a discussion off the record. Well, in Pastor Keith Williams' transcripts, you see it right here at line number 9. The court, all right, I think under the circumstances, let's just play the audio. See what I'm saying? Now you just want to play audio under certain circumstances. No. Audio played, audio stopped. The court, okay, all done. Mr. Scholar, no, there's a second video. Audio played, audio stopped. Mr. Canning, thank you, Your Honor. But see, here's the thing. They played the audio because they didn't want the jurors to see the video. But for Rob, they played everything they put together in New York to make it look like Rob was a bad person, audio and video. So the court said, all right, are you ready to call blank? I think we have somebody appearing by video. No. Who's the next witness? Ms. Cruz Melendez, Your Honor, the government called Keith Williams to the stand. Please stand and raise your right hand. The witness, Keith Williams, is duly sworn, affirmed by the clerk. Please state your name for the record. Keith Williams. Thank you. Please have a seat. Okay, Mr. Williams. You can take your mask off. And I just want to give you a couple of instructions before we begin. Sure. Our court reporters take down everything. Well, you can't say that because y'all just got something off the record that your court reporters didn't take. But it says our court reporters take down everything that you say. So it's important that you not speak too quickly or talk over any of the lawyers that are questioning you. It just makes their job a lot harder. So I'm going to ask you to speak up also into the microphone. If there's a question that you don't understand or want to have clarified, let me know. And I'll have our lawyers do that for you. And just do your best to answer the specific questions that you're being asked, okay? Then it says the witness. Yes, Your Honor. Okay, go ahead. Is that on? Just tap. Okay, go ahead. Miss Cruz Melendez. Thank you. Direct examination. Mr. Williams, are you employed? Yes. And how are you employed? I'm a pastor. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Yes. And how are you employed? I'm a pastor. Just move the microphone a little closer to you. Great, thank you. How long have you been a pastor? It will be 14 years in November. Do you do anything else for work? I buy and sell a few cars. Where did you grow up? Robert Taylor, Inglewood, and South Shore. Where is that? South side of Chicago, Illinois. Yes. And how far did you go in school? 4. I attended college 4 years and not quite with a completion of a degree. Did you do any other schooling? Yes. What kind of schooling? A number of training for pastoring, theology, and that kind of stuff. Approximately, when did you start attending college? I graduated high school in 81. So directly after that. And did you graduate from college? I did 4 years with not quite completing. Okay, while attending college, did you work at all? Yes. And where did you work? I worked a number of jobs. I worked for UPS, post office, intervals of several months, First National Bank of Chicago. Many times these jobs were simultaneous. When you worked for UPS, what did you do there? I worked for the dispatch office. And approximately, when did you work? Approximately how long did you work for UPS? Several months. You testified earlier that you currently work as a pastor. Prior to being a pastor, did you work in any other fields? Yes. And what fields did you work in? In the mortgage business. And how old did you work? And how old did you work in the mortgage businesses? What? A number of years, about many years. I think over 20 years. And approximately, when did you first start working in the mortgage industry? Dates running together for me, but it was a few years after high school. When you worked in the mortgage industry, were you employed by the businesses or did you have your own business? The majority of it, I worked for other people for a number of years, and then I did have my own business. I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as Government's Exhibit 7. Just the witness. Do you see that there, sir, on the screen? No. Do you now see Government's Exhibit 7 on the screen before you? Yes. Do you recognize that? Yes. And generally speaking, what is that? It's a picture of myself. And approximately when, just generally, was this photo taken? I would guess maybe 88. And this is the photograph. And is this photograph a fair and accurate representation of you in the late 80s? Yes. Ms. Cruz. The government offers Government Exhibit 7 until evidence. Mr. Canick, no objection. Okay, that's an evidence. Can we publish to the jury and the public, please? Are you familiar with an individual named Robert Kelly, also known as R. Kelly? Yes. And how do you know Robert Kelly? We've been friends for a long time. The court, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Can you just speak into the microphone? Yes. We've been friends for a long time. Okay. And approximately how old were you at the time when you met Robert Kelly? Early 20s. It could have been earlier. I'm showing the witness and the public and the jury what's in evidence as Government's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize the individual in Government's Exhibit 1? Yes. And who is it? Robert Kelly. Do you? I'd like you to take a moment and look around the courtroom. Excuse me. And tell me whether or not you see Robert Kelly in the courtroom today. Yes. Can you point him out and identify him by identifying a piece of clothing that he's wearing? It's a taupe or caramel colored shirt. It looks like from here, indicating the defendant. I'm sorry. No, I just said you were pointing out the defendant. Yes. All right, go ahead. And under what circumstances did you meet the defendant? There's a person who grew up who was in my church. He introduced the two of us. At some point, did you become familiar with the defendant's occupation? You know, yes. Okay, and what did the defendant do as an occupation? He was a musician, singer, songwriter. And was he working as a singer when you first got to know the defendant? No, he was. I mean, he sang, but he was not professionally at the time. I met him before he got signed. Okay, and at some point, did he start singing professionally? Yes. How would you describe your relationship with the defendant? Friends. Okay, and how often would you see the defendant? This is sort of, I worked a lot, so it would be a few times a month. Did you ever visit the defendant's home? Yes. I'm showing just the witness what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 501A and 501B. Before I do that, actually, you mentioned that you had previously visited the defendant at his home. Do you recall where he lived? Well, he owned a home at 1010 George Street. So I'm showing just the witness 501A and 501B. Do you see that there on the screen? Yes. I'm going to show you 501B. Do you recognize these? Yes. And what do you recognize them to be? 1010 George Street, where the defendant lived. Yes. The government offers Government Exhibit 501A and 501B into evidence. The court, any objection? No, no objection. All right, those are in evidence. If I can publish to the jury and to the public, please. So the government's Exhibit 501A and 501B, you testified that that's 1010 George Street where the defendant lived. Yes. Okay. And was that in Chicago, Illinois? Yes. Do you recall the time frame when the defendant lived there? No. Was it the early days when you met the defendant? Yes. Well, the early days. He didn't own a home. At some point when you knew the defendant, did he own the home at 1010 George Street? Yes. And did you also visit the defendant at any studios? Yes. Do you recall where the studio was? No. Was it in Chicago? Yes. Do you recall the general area? It was west of the Loop of Chicago Loop, or west of North Michigan Avenue. And you know, it was between Halstead and it was north, the near north side of Chicago. Now, during your friendship with the defendant, at any point, did you travel with the defendant? Yes. On how many occasions did you travel with the defendant? I think just a couple. And when you travel with the defendant, what mode of transportation did you use? I traveled with him on a bus. Once I remember for sure. And what kind of bus? It was a tour bus. And did you travel outside of the state with the defendant? Yes. Genuinely speaking, do you recall where you went on the tour bus with the defendant? Yes. The only time that I was on the tour bus with them was when we went to Louisiana. Now, during the time period that you were friends with the defendant, did you have an opportunity to meet people in the defendant's inner circle? Yes. Who do you recall meeting? I met a number of people. Any names that you recall meeting? Gerald. You said Gerald. Do you know Gerald's full name? Yes, Gerald Jones. And did Gerald have any nicknames? Yes. Anyone else? I'm sorry. What was Gerald Jones' nickname? Blackie. Anyone else? Yes. I met Daryl McDavid. And who did you know Daryl McDavid to be? He was the accountant. Whose accountant? Robert's accountant. And just going back to Gerald, the individual you said who was named Blackie, who was he to the defendant? I believe he's a blood relative. Do you know when kind of relative? Wow, when kind of relative? Not really, but they're pretty close. I think maybe first cousins or something. And anyone else? I met June. And I don't know his last name. I met a number of people. Are you familiar with any individual named Barry Hankerson? Yes. And who is Barry Hankerson? Barry is Robert's manager. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification purposes as government's Exhibit A. Do you recognize that individual? Yes. And who is it? Gerald Jones. Gerald Jones? Sir, I'm having trouble hearing you. Gerald Jones. So much better. Thanks. And Gerald Jones, that's the individual you said was named Blackie. Yes. Is this a fair and accurate representation of Gerald Jones, also known as Blackie? Yes. Melinda Cruz, the government offers Government Exhibit 8 into evidence. Any objection? No. All right. That's an evidence you can publish. You also testified that you were familiar with an individual from your friendship with the defendant named Daryl McDavid. I'm showing the witness and the public what's in evidence as Government's Exhibit 12. Do you recognize that individual? Yes. Who is that? Daryl McDavid. Are you familiar with an individual named Aaliyah? Yes. Who is Aaliyah? Who is Aaliyah? She's the entertainer who died a tragic death. And what, if any, relationship did she have with the defendant? I'm told that they were married. Matter of fact, they were married. Wait a minute. I'm told that they were married. Matter of fact, they were married. Canning said, I'm going to object. How do you know they were married? It was referenced in the public. It was in the media. There we go. How do you know they were married? It was referenced in the public. It was in the media. Now stop. This is the pastor that's supposed to have married them. So if this is the pastor that's supposed to be going over, that's supposed to have married them, and if that was a real marriage, don't you think the pastor would have said, I'm the one that married them? But he said it was referenced in the public. It was in the media. Then the court said, all right, is that the only way you know about it? Were you there when they got married? No. Hold on. Is that the only way you know about it? Were you there when they got married? No. And this is the pastor. This is the pastor that the other folks said, oh, he married them. But he's telling you, no, he wasn't there. So then the court said, all right, next question. Are you familiar with, you testified that you're familiar with an individual named Barry Hankerson. He said, yes. And what, if any, connection did Barry Hankerson have to Aaliyah? I believe that they were blood relatives, so he don't know for sure. I'm going to object. If he knows for a fact, he can testify. Do you know if they were? Sometimes people say, I believe, and they actually know. The witness, I don't know. Next question. You previously testified that you had a mortgage business, correct? Yes. Can you just explain genuinely to the jurors what that entails? Just very genuinely. If somebody needed a mortgage, they would come and we would take their information and broker it to an institution that will fund their mortgage. Mortgages for houses, real estate. Real estate? Things of that nature, yes. And did you have, when you had your own business, did you have an office? Yes. Did the defendant ever visit you at the office? Yes. It was, to my knowledge, maybe once or twice, maybe. So I want to talk about an incident in which the defendant visited you at your office. Yes. Okay. If you could explain to the jurors what happened when the defendant visited your office, visited you there, I'm sorry. He indicated, I believe, that he was going to get married. He indicated, he ain't say, but he indicated. Then the dude turned around and said, I believe that he wanted to get, then pause, he was going to get married. Sound like somebody got paid to me. When you say he indicated, what do you mean? Robert, the defendant. Yes. So just to be clear, the defendant visits you at your office, yes, and he indicated to you that he wanted to be married, correct? Answer, yes. At the time, did you know who he wanted to be, who he wanted to marry? Answer, the Aaliyah. So hold on. Either the pastor, and we know the pastor wasn't there when he married him, right? Now he's saying that Robert indicated that he wanted to marry Aaliyah. Right? Make this make sense. Now, who, if anyone else with the defendant, when he came to your office to say he wanted to get married to Aaliyah? There were a number of people. Do you recall any of the names of the people who were there? In my office, not necessarily in where we were. Correct, in your office. I think it was June and Demetrius. Do you know Demetrius' last name? No. And you also mentioned June was there, correct? It could have been some others. I just don't. Wait a minute. It could have been some others. I just don't. Okay. Do you recall what, if any, relationship June had to the defendant? I think he was like an assistant. What did the defendant say to you after he told you he wanted to get married to Aaliyah? The government slick. Robert never said he needed to do anything, but the government threw that in there. And then came back and said he wanted to get married to Aaliyah. He asked if I knew a minister. And what did you say? Yes. You said yes? You knew a minister? Yes. And did you provide him with any names of ministers? Yes. Whose name did you provide? Nathan Edmond. And how did you know Nathan Edmond? He was also involved in real estate, and he was a tax buyer sort of a person, and he was involved in real estate in general. Was he a minister? Yes. And how did you know that? I knew him from real estate, and we were friends. I'm showing just the witness what's being marked as, for identification purposes, as Government Exhibit 89. Do you see that there, sir? Yes. Generally speaking, what's in Government Exhibit 89? A picture of Nathan Edmond. And is that a fair and accurate representation of Nathan Edmond? Yes. The government offers Government Exhibit 89. Any objection? No. All right. That's an evidence. You can publish it. So you mentioned that this meeting with the defendant happened at your office. Do you recall where your office was located? 9730 Southwestern in Evergreen Park, Illinois. Is that near Chicago? Yes. How close is it to Chicago? One side of the west side of Western is Evergreen Park, and the east side of Western is Chicago. So is it like a suburb of Chicago? Yes. So you testified that you remember Nathan Edmond to the defendant. Yes. Who, if anyone, reached out to Nathan Edmond once you recommended him to the defendant? I'm not sure. But I may have called him. I just don't remember. When you say you may have called him, what do you mean? You may have called Nathan Edmond? Yes. Did Nathan Edmond ultimately agree to officiate the wedding? Yes. Did the defendant say when he intended to marry Aaliyah? Not specifically. Did you get an impression as to the time frame as to when it was to happen? My assumption was that it was going to be soon. My assumption. The first word of assumption is what? Ass. So, Mr. Williams, I want to turn your attention for a moment. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Yes. And what crime were you convicted of? 1 count of bank fraud and 1 count of perjury. Oh, shit. Here we go. And approximately, when was this? This was approximately early 2000 and maybe 1 or 2. And genuinely speaking, what were the circumstances that led to your conviction? There was a transaction that went through my office and I benefited from it and I got indicted. It was a 95 transaction and I went to trial and I lost. Were you sentenced as a result of your conviction? Yes. And what was your sentence? 24 months. And did you serve the sentence? No. What did you serve? The judge gave me an option of going to boot camp, even though I was too old, and it ended up being 7 months. And you served those 7 months at boot camp? Yes. Now, turning back to your interactions with the defendant, at any point did you work for the defendant? No. Did you and the defendant ever discuss the prospects of you working for him? Yes. What did you discuss? Robert, when I got in trouble, Robert offered to give me a job. He described it as being in the point system. And what did you understand that to mean? One of his managers. Now, you had previously mentioned that Barry Hankinson was his manager, correct? Yes. And you mentioned that the defendant had offered you a job as a manager. Yes. Did you understand you would be replacing Barry Hankinson? I did not. I just don't remember the time frame. I did not. Nothing further. Any cross-examination? Just maybe 1 or 2 questions. Okay. Good afternoon. Is your microphone on? I think it's on. Let's give it a shot. Cross-examination. Mr. Williams, do you recall occasions when Robert would call you crying? Yes. Objection, Your Honor. Sustained. May we have a brief sidebar, Your Honor? Yes. The following occurred at sidebar. Talk about beyond the scope of the direct. This is not, Your Honor, in the direct examination by the people. The government. Yes, by the government. There was inquiry as to knowledge about the wedding that Robert planned for himself and Aaliyah. Right. And in the statement, oh, that can't come in. That's hearsay. Oh, so Ann Dolly ain't want that to come in. That would have busted open, but she let everybody else hearsay come in. No, this is from Robert to him. Kelly called Williams crying sometimes, and Kelly stated that he married her to protect her from her mother. That is rank hearsay. Sorry. Mr. Cannick, I'm not offering it for the truth of the matter, Your Honor. Court, yes, you are. No, I'm not. What are you offering it for? That this is what he said. That's hearsay. My exception. Nice try. Do you have any further questions? No, I don't think so. I always like to end on a high note, Your Honor. So I have to find a high note. Okay, nothing hearsay though. End of sidebar conference. You testified earlier that Barry Hankerson was Mr. Kelly's manager. Yes. Okay, and Barry Hankerson, I think you testified, might have been related to Aaliyah. It was my understanding, yes. And near the time that blank withdrawn, Barry Hankerson was eventually terminated by Mr. Kelly. Am I correct? Yes. And Barry Hankerson had a fearsome reputation. Am I correct? Yes. Thank you. All right. Nothing further. Any direct? No, Your Honor. All right. Thank you, Mr. Williams. You can step down. All right. We were just at the lunch break, so I think we'll break for lunch at 2:15. Don't talk about the case or anything else about the witnesses or anything like that. But do have a good lunch, and we'll see you at 2:15. Jury exits the court. All right. So what's the blank? Do you have other witnesses for this afternoon? Any of them video? Get us. Yes. Which one? The one we talked about this morning. No, Veronica Jackson. She'll be testifying about the 241, the t-shirt. Okay. And anybody after that? We have 2 initial witnesses. All right. Who are they? They are blank. I'll let you know. Malik and Arnold. So the government has given the names of the witnesses to the defense. Anything else that we have to do before we break for lunch? Not from the government. I just need to see the parties at the side without the reporter. Just a second, just on scheduling. Discussion off the record. I think we're good. I have a good lunch, everyone. Lunch on recess. Okay. So with that being said, right? With that even being reported and just reading that little bit right there, that lets me know that Ann Donnelly was on her best BS. That lets me know that Ann Donnelly was on her best BS. You know what I mean? That let me know that she was on her best BS. So I'm going to play a little video for y'all. Pay attention to this video. Trust me. It's going to open your eyes about the way the government do things. Check this out. This is the video of Rabia Chaudry, which is a friend of Adnan Syed. Check this out.
They tore the lining of his trunk out. No body fluids. There was no evidence. There was not a single bit of forensic evidence tying Adnan to the crime, which another way to think about it, because it's all about framing, is that all the forensics excluded Adnan. When her car was finally found, there were 16 sets of fingerprints in that car that the police never determined who they belonged to, because they didn't match Adnan, they didn't match Jay, and they didn't match the victim, Hay. What the police didn't do was say, well, we've got this hair, and we've got these fingerprints, maybe we should check and see if they match anybody else. Maybe we should take hair samples and fingerprint her actual boyfriend. Or maybe somebody else she worked with, or somebody she went to school with, or somebody in her family, or somebody she was chatting online with, or anything. So you've got a victim who's got these hairs on her body and fingerprints in her car that don't match anybody, and they proceed with the prosecution. Adnan was convicted. There were 2 trials. The first trial happened towards the end of 1999 in December. And I was again in law school, I was taking my final exams, and I could not attend. And one of the things we have to understand when we think about the criminal justice system, yeah, these are public proceedings. Who shows up? Who gives up work and school to sit in a courtroom during the daytime? Nobody. Most courtrooms are empty when you go there. It can be a serious case where somebody might be facing the death penalty, and there might be nobody in that courtroom watching what's happening, okay? This is true for criminal proceedings, it's true for immigration proceedings, and everything in between. The second trial, that trial ended in a mistrial. It ended in a mistrial because his lawyer committed some misconduct in the courtroom. And the judge called her a liar, it didn't go well, called a mistrial, end of that. They were just a few days into the trial. The second trial was just a few months later, or a month later, and I happened to be on break from school, so I was able to attend that trial. And the trial lasted, I actually can't remember how long it lasted a few weeks. But about 90% of the trial was the prosecution putting on their case. The defense counsel put on a case for about 3 days, 2.5, 3 days. The jury was out. I remember the day that they gave the closing arguments. I was there, and the judge dismissed the jury to begin their deliberations, and it was early in the morning. It was around 10 or 11, if I'm remembering correctly. And I thought, okay, let's go grab some lunch. It's a Friday. Let's go grab some lunch, and I guess we're just gonna go home because we'll hear from them like in Monday or Tuesday or whenever they're done deliberating. We were still thinking about where we were gonna go for lunch when it was about 2 hours later. Well, I had gone for a walk first, and other people were trying to come and meet me in the city for lunch when I got a call saying that the jury is ready to return their verdict. This is like in 2.5 hours. In a murder case with a life sentence. So I thought, this can only be an acquittal. There's no way they can convict a juvenile of murder in 2.5 hours when you have weeks and weeks of evidence and testimony to deliberate over. Anyhow, we go back, and Adnan was convicted on all charges. And the charge, and this is another way the system works, prosecutors don't just charge with one charge. They'll add everything they can. They'll throw the kitchen sink at it, at the defendant. So you had murder, you had kidnapping, because they said that Adnan somewhere intervened, found Heyman Lee, they don't know where, and took off with her, and then he killed her. So kidnapping, theft, because her purse was missing, her car keys were missing, her pager was missing, all of these things. Now, Adnan was convicted for 2 reasons. The first is incompetence. And when I sat in that trial, and I, again, was a law student, I could not understand what I was seeing. Adnan's trial counsel, his defense attorney, was a very highly celebrated woman named Christina Gutierrez, who had like a 30, 40-year career in Baltimore as one of the best criminal defense attorneys. But what I saw was a woman who was incoherent, rambling, angry, and just I didn't understand what was going on. I saw people in the jury asleep. There were times when she wouldn't finish a sentence. There were times when she would repeat the same sentence over and over and over. And I kept looking around thinking, and here's the thing, I was in that courtroom because I didn't have classes during those few weeks. Behind me were just elders from our community who didn't even understand what was going on, you know? And all those elders looked like people, men with beards and women wearing scarves like me. And then you have a jury from Baltimore City that is not a jury of Adnan's peers in any way, shape, or form. They don't know our community. All they see is what they're seeing visually, right? But Adnan's religion and his ethnicity were mentioned 270 times in the trial in a murder case. Now, I would say that that's unconstitutional. I would say that is abhorrent. I would say that is unethical and immoral to do that to a 17-year-old juvenile, to use his religion against him. Some of the questions the prosecutor asked, he called in a witness, one of Adnan's friends from the mosque, and asked him really weird questions. How many times a day do you pray? What direction do you pray in? Do women pray behind you or next to you? How do you fold your hands when you pray? Like, what are you doing? What was the purpose of these? I'll tell you what the purpose of these were. It was to alienate our community. It was to make us seem like we are so weird. And you know, years later, when Sarah Koenig, who created Serial, went and spoke to some jury members, they said, yeah, that was kind of an issue. The religion thing was kind of an issue because these Arab guys are not so great to their women. So the incompetence here was that his lawyer did not challenge any of these 270 times. In fact, many of the times she brought him up herself. And fear. Fear was the other reason he was convicted, and that is because of the religious issue. Now, the other reason incompetence came into play was this. Adnan's lawyer, shortly after his trial, in about a year or two after his trial, was disbarred, and then she died. We did not know at the time of his trial that she was handling 9 murder cases at the same time, which is unheard of even for the most competent attorney at the top of their game. That she had a cognitive disability, that she had muscular dystrophy, that she had multiple sclerosis. Some people said she might have had cancer at the time, that she might have been on drugs. There was a time when she asked Adnan's parents for $10,000 in a paper bag. Lawyers don't do that. Shouldn't be doing that. And they gave it to her. Something was very wrong. But she was disbarred, not because of Adnan's case. Adnan tried to file a complaint against her, and it was rejected because he wasn't able to show like the receipts of all the payments. The complaint he was filing was that we paid her to do things she didn't do. For example, I was there in her office when his parents wrote a check for $5,000 to bus the jury to the crime scene, and she never did it. But he wasn't able to provide the evidence, so his complaint was rejected. However, 40 other complaints against Cristina Gutierrez got her disbarred. She broke the record for attorney grievances in the state of Maryland, and that record has never since been broken. She holds that record. There's an attorney grievance commission fund that pays victims. She bankrupted it. That's how many people they had to pay out. These are things, by the way, I don't think Serial talked about. So Adnan was in the hands of somebody who was on her last legs, and then, like I said, she died because she was that sick. So then what? What are you stuck with? You're stuck with appeals. And I can tell you this, once you've been convicted in this country, your chances of winning an appeal are maybe 1%, 2%, 3%. That's it. So we began the appellate process, and if you know anything about the law, you'll understand that you can't just go to an appeal, the appellate court, and say, I want to try this issue again, I want to try this case again, or I want to try this fact again, and this witness, I want to bring this witness. You're not even allowed to bring new evidence. You could find evidence. You could find a videotape of somebody else committing that crime, and you cannot raise it in appeal. What you can raise are technical issues in the trial. Like the judge made incorrect legal rulings, the lawyer made a technical mistake. Anyhow, we tried it. Didn't work. First appeal lost, second appeal lost, third appeal lost. The years are rolling by. The years are rolling by. But here's the thing. I had a piece of new evidence that I was holding because we couldn't use it yet. But I was holding it pretty much from the day that Adnan was convicted, because the day he was convicted, I went to see him in the prison, in the holding cell in the city. And I said to Adnan, I said, you know, the prosecution says, they said it in their closing arguments, that Heyman Lee left school around 2 o'clock and she was dead by 2:36 p.m. All you had to do was account for 30 minutes of your time after school. That's it. And Adnan said, you know, they arrested me like 2 months later, 2.5 months later. He's like, all I know is every day my routine was the same. I'd finish classes, I'd hang out until track practice at the school, I'd go to the library sometimes I'd do my homework, I'd just, whatever, just hang out until track practice at 3 o'clock. So there's an hour there. And then he goes, but you know, there was this girl who wrote me these letters when I first got arrested a year ago. And she said she remembered being with me in the library that day for very specific reasons. I said, well, I never heard of her. How come she wasn't at trial? He said, well, I gave the letters to my lawyer. Again, very, very sick Cristina Gutierrez. And the lawyer came back to me and said, I checked her dates out and she had her dates wrong. He's like, so that's the end of that. He's like, that's the only possible person who might have accounted for my time. I said, give me her name, give me her number, I'm going to contact her. So a couple of weeks after his conviction, I contacted Asia McClain and I went to see her. And Asia said, I wrote those letters over a year ago because I remember being at the library. I remember why it was that day. I remember my boyfriend coming to pick me up and being angry that I was talking to Adnan. I remember being stuck in a snowstorm that night. I remember school being closed the next 2 days. Everything she told me, I went and verified to see, was school really closed that day? Was there a snowstorm? I was able to independently verify like the things that she remembered. And then I said, well, why didn't you appear at trial? She said, well, nobody ever contacted me. So Adnan's lawyer had an alibi in her hand, and she never contacted that alibi. And in all those appeals down the road, we could not raise it because that's considered new evidence. We had to wait for something called post-conviction. 10 years down. So, 10 years have passed, what am I doing? And I want to take a step back and tell you about what I'm doing with my life in the meantime. In the meantime, like I said, I had been in law school when Adnan was arrested. I went on to graduate from law school shortly after 9/11. And while I wanted to be a corporate attorney while I was in law school, the demands of our community after 9/11 drastically changed. Suddenly, we needed civil rights lawyers, we needed lawyers working with law enforcement, we needed all kinds of people in national security. And, you know, I was a lawyer at a time when everybody in our community was going to medical school or engineering school, and so I was like a failed doctor, basically. My parents were like, what is she doing? We're so humiliated that she's going to law school. That's not even, that's actually true. It wasn't until after 9/11 they're like, well, maybe it's important work. And so I became, while I had been working in immigration, suddenly the nexus of immigration and civil rights became very clear because immigrants were being targeted, immigration policies were being used to enforce national security policies. And so I began working on these issues, but I also became kind of an advocate in the Muslim community. I began writing, speaking, you know, doing trainings, doing all kinds of things. Again, the appeals are going forward. Well, we're finally ready for the post-conviction appeal, and we're like, we need to bring Asia to court. We're going to present this witness, finally, who's going to say, I was with him at the time the victim was killed. Literally. I was literally with him at the time the victim was killed. We send a private investigator to find Asia McClain, who is the alibi witness. And Asia McClain tells our private investigator, I'm not coming. I will not testify for Adnan. And we didn't know what happened. It was like a punch to the face. We had waited about 12 years for this. So we went to the hearing. I testified and I said, well, I met with Asia. These are the documents she gave. She gave me an affidavit and she wrote these letters to Adnan. The judge is like, why isn't the witness here? And you know what happened? The original prosecutor of the case from 12, 13 years prior gets on the stand on behalf of the state and he says, well, the witness called me. The witness called me because this private investigator visited her and said, come testify. And that witness told me that she wrote those documents because she had been under duress and pressure by the family and by me. And I was sitting in that courtroom thinking, that is a lie. That's a complete and utter lie. And it was shocking to my system because I didn't know what was happening. But in that one blow, it was over. I was like, that's it, we're going to lose this case. Now, whenever you have a hearing, it takes like months and months to get like an actual ruling from a judge. But we left depressed. I was like, a prosecutor just got on the stand and said the only alibi witness he had made those claims under duress from the family. He's not going to believe us. So then I started thinking, what are we going to do? And for years I had thought, maybe we need to go to the media, because I had watched Dateline in 2020, and I'm like, we need another investigators. And I watched a documentary that night, not that night, but a few weeks later, I was watching this documentary on Netflix called West of Memphis. How many people are familiar with the West Memphis case? I really urge you to take a look at this case. There's been like 4 or 5 documentaries made about this brutal murder of 3 little boys, a triple homicide in which 3 teenagers were convicted. What you're going to find is every single documentary that was made, every one you watch, you're going to be like, oh no, it was that person. Oh no, it was that person. Oh no. It will completely shift your understanding of the case. And when I watched this very final documentary, I think the 4th or the 5th of this, in all the documentaries made on the case called West of Memphis, I suddenly was like, it's all about how you tell the story, right? And about who's covering the story and what they find. We have to get media involved. I turned off the documentary and I said, I'm going to find a journalist who maybe wrote about Adnan's case back in 1999, and this is again 2013. And the very first name that came up was Sarah Koenig. Sarah Koenig worked for the Baltimore Sun. She hadn't written about Adnan's case, but she had written about Adnan's lawyer being disbarred. And I thought, well, I'm just going to find her wherever she is. And she happened to be a producer at NPR, or This American Life, excuse me. So I shot her an email and I said, well, look, here's the deal. There's this case that happened, and you covered the story about the lawyer, and you might be interested, and whatever. I just think somebody should look into it. And the next day, or a day or two later, I got a response saying, okay, well, let's just talk about it on the phone. And we talked a little bit, and a week later, she came to see me. And when you hear Serial, in the very first episode, what you hear is me talking and my brother talking. That was the very first time we met Sarah Koenig, and we started telling her about the case. And she was immediately hooked. Now, she spent 10 months, 11 months investigating the case. And as she investigated, I didn't know what she was I didn't know what she was finding. I just kind of worked as a fixer. You need to talk to that person in the community, I'll connect you here. You need these documents, I'll get them for you here. Whatever you need, I'll give to you. I didn't know what she was finding. I didn't know what she was going to create. What I thought was going to happen was, at the end of all of this will be a 1-hour This American Life episode about the case, maybe. But I also didn't care, because it wasn't about the final product. What I wanted to know is, did she find the smoking gun? Did she get a witness to talk? Did she find new evidence that's going to get Adnan back in court? Now, I have to say this. I actually convinced Sarah Koenig before I convinced Adnan, his lawyer. I did this without their permission. Most criminal defense lawyers will never let a journalist close their client. They just don't do it. It doesn't happen. They won't even let their clients testify in court, even if they're innocent. So it would have been a very hard sell, except for the fact that his lawyer, who had been working with us, a very great, wonderful lawyer, who had been working with us for about 6 years at the time, said, I'm kind of done with this case anyways. We're losing the post-conviction. There's nothing else I can do. It's over. Do whatever you want. And Adnan said okay, because he just wanted to get me off his back. He was like, this journalist is not going to find anything. Nothing's going to come of this. Rabia has worked so hard. I just want to make her happy. So at the end of 10 months, in August of 2014, Sarah Koenig calls me and said, we're turning this into a 10 or 12 part, we're turning this into a podcast, 12 parts. And I said, what is a podcast? I don't know what a podcast is. I had no idea what a podcast was. And she's like, well, it's a series of internet shows. I'm like, internet shows? Who's going to listen to an internet show? And at this point, 10, 12 months in, again, no evidence, nothing new, other than what she was able to do was she was able to talk to Asia McLean, that alibi witness, and tell her that, you didn't show up in court, so this is what the prosecutor said. And Asia said to her, that's a lie. I never made those statements under duress. I did not write those documents under duress. And the prosecutor actually had spoken to me. She said, when the private investigator came to me from Adnan's team to ask me to come testify, she said, all I could think was, this convicted killer has found me, like across the country. She lives like across the country. She's like, he found me, he knows where I live, now he wants me to come help him get him out of prison. So she's like, I called the prosecutor from the case, and I said, why was Adnan convicted? And the prosecutor told her, he was convicted on the basis of DNA evidence, incontrovertible evidence. He's looking for a loophole to get out. Don't help him. The prosecutor tampered with this witness. She believed him, and that same man then got on the stand and told the judge that this witness told me she had been forced to make those documents. So Sarah Koenig was able to solve that mystery for us, and we thought, okay, how are we going to use this to get back in court? We got to figure that out. Now, when Serial happened, it was an overnight sensation. I don't know if you guys remember, the first couple of weeks, they dropped 2 episodes each week. I had a blog at the time. I was blogging. I still have a blog, but I haven't blogged in a while. And again, I didn't know what they were going to talk about, but what I decided to do was, as every episode dropped, I would write a blog about it. Now, this really upset the Serial team. They did not want me inserting myself, but I said, well, I'm not going to preempt anything you're going to say. I'm just going to respond to your episode and fill in some context. And that was kind of like me trying to take that power back and balance the narrative a bit. But the other thing I was doing was this. Because I had worked for about 10 years in American Muslim advocacy, I had worked with New America Foundation, I'd worked with Google, Facebook, Twitter on social media advocacy, I was like, I know how to do this. I can turn this into a thing on social media. So I created the hashtag #FreeAdnan. And I began tweeting it, and I began people asked me later, did you have a social media team? I'm like, no, it was me and my smartphone on the toilet. That was it. It was just me tweeting in my sleep. It was just me on that phone, constantly doing it. And the attention that Serial attracted was incredible. It was a global phenomenon. I think I gave interviews to Radio Ireland 4 times. I don't know why Ireland's obsessed with this case, but they love it. I interviewed with CNN India, Australia has one of the highest listenerships. It was crazy. But what Serial also did was this. It brought resources to the case. Suddenly other lawyers, investigators, people who had some kind of forensic background were reaching out to us and saying, hey, you need some help? Hey, maybe I can help you here. Hey, I think these are some discrepancies. And I had begun on my blog uploading case documents. I was like, have at it. Just look at the documents. Maybe. And I'm not a criminal investigator. I don't know how to do this. I need help. People help me. And there were two lawyers whose blogs I began reading, Susan Simpson and Colin Miller, because I'm like, they're reading these documents and they're seeing things I've never seen before. And I began reading their blogs. And they were astonishing. Susan Simpson wrote a 40-page blog on cell phone tower pings. I'm not kidding. But what she did in that blog was she broke down how the state's witness, his testimony actually didn't match the cell phone tower evidence at all. But Serial said it did. So Serial did a lot of great things, but what Serial was unable to do was actually conduct a real legal investigation of the case. They got some things wrong. Okay, it happens. Some things and I got in arguments with them about. I'll give you an example. They did one episode in which they talked about the police involved in this case. Now, having done now about 12, 13 other wrongful conviction cases since Serial, that's become the bulk of my work, you see patterns. If you're looking at cases from Philadelphia, it'll be the same 3 cops that pop up in every case over and over. There are patterns of misconduct. It's always a few bad apples that just mess up the whole basket. And I said to Sarah, I said, the cops in Adnan's case have been cited in other cases for coercing witnesses. There have been people exonerated and sued these same cops for false prosecution and for like contriving evidence. I said, you should mention that. These are active cases. Mention that in the podcast. But she was like, no, in the podcast it was like they were basically good guys just doing their work. That's not true. I'm not saying they're not good guys. I'm saying they weren't doing their jobs. And since then, there's at least 5 cases I can name out of Baltimore from the same era that involve the same cops in which 3 men have already been exonerated because they use the same kind of tactics. What Serial didn't do was talk about the most important piece of evidence in a case where you don't have real forensic evidence, and that's the body. A body, an autopsy can tell you a lot about a crime, a lot about a homicide. It can tell you how that person was killed. It can tell you how long they've been dead. It can tell you if the body's been moved. And when you have 12 episodes on a murder case, that's a mystery, because that's what people loved about Serial, right? The mystery. Did he do it? Didn't he do it? Is he a great guy? I mean, the choices were he's an amazing guy who's been screwed, or he's a complete psychopath, right? But when you have a murder mystery like that, you should look at the body. And they didn't look at the body. So I want to talk now about the evidence of innocence, because what happened with Serial was it brought us the resources that helped us find the evidence of innocence. And one of those things was the body, the autopsy. Now, if you remember, the timeline of the murder was this, that Hay left school around 2 o'clock. The state says she's dead by 2:36. According to their state's witness, she's been buried by around 7:30 p.m. that night. Okay? She was left dumped in the grave, kind of contorted. Her body was on its side, but slightly facing forward, with one arm behind her back, one arm like raised like this, under her head. It's hard to describe, but she was not laid out flat, let's just say it like that. But here's what the autopsy showed. The autopsy showed something called full frontal lividity. Now when a person dies, if you die on your back, and your body just lays there for 7-8 hours, all the blood will pool to the bottom of your body. And the bottom of your body, if they lift you, if they turn you over, is going to be purple, smooth and purple, all the way down. That's lividity. That's your blood pooling. And medical examiners can tell if somebody's body has been turned, like somewhere in that first 8 hours. Because after 8 hours, you can turn the body however you want, 8 to 10 hours, the blood won't move. But if the body's been turned before it fixes, then they'll see the blood was over here, then it kind of shifted here, then it kind of shifted. They can actually tell how the body's been moved. What Hay had was full frontal lividity, meaning all of the blood was pooled on the very front of her in a very smooth, uninterrupted pattern. So when Hayman Lee was killed, that means she was lying flat on her face for 10 to 12 hours during which time the lividity fixed. She was never moved for 8 to 10 to 12 hours. And then she was dumped in Lincoln Park. That autopsy report alone is evidence of innocence. That autopsy report alone shows that the state got everything wrong about how and when she was killed. Hae-Min Lee was not left in that park at 7 p.m. She couldn't have. If she had been left at that park at 7 p.m., her lividity would have been in this arm, on this side of her thing, on part of this torso. It would have been all over. It wouldn't have been like she had been lying flat on her face for 10 hours straight. And then moved. Now, she could have been moved later that night. She could have been moved 2 days later. That we'll never know. That we might, but that we don't know is what I'm trying to say. Then you have the witness, Jay Wiles. And so the question is this, and in all these years I thought, well, if Adnan didn't do it, he says he didn't do it. I always asked him about Jay, he's like, and Adnan was always confused. He's like, I don't think Jay had anything to do with it. Why would Jay kill her? I don't know why he's saying these things. We didn't know why either. And Jay's statement, not just during the trial, but even in the police statements he gave before the trial, changed about 8 times. We had a spreadsheet that was about 60 pages thick, about this big, that tracked the number of changes in Jay's stories. And if you remember in Serial, Sarah Koenig says, trying to track Jay's stories is like trying to track somebody's dream. She says something like that, right? But the thing is, the problem is this, it wasn't Jay's dream. It was the police officer's dream. What we discovered was this, and Susan Simpson pieced this together. She took a timeline of Jay's statements and when they changed, and then she took a timeline of the police investigation. Every time the police found something new, Jay's statement would change to accommodate this new evidence. Then the police would find, for example, in the first interview, what did you do with her purse? We threw it in the car. We threw it in the woods. Uh-oh, the police just found the purse in the trunk of her car. What did you do with the purse? We put it in the trunk of her car. Like, this is the way the statements kept changing and changing and changing. At one point, he says, before I dropped him off track practice, we went to this park, another park, like 10 miles away. We smoked joints, just randomly. And then we went back. Why did that? And then that park story disappeared. Why? Because the police had the phone records. And what they had done was taken the cell tower that pinged, and they had put it in the wrong place on the map. The original police map showed the tower here when it was actually here, and suddenly Jay had to make a story that said, oh, we were over here. But then when they fixed the map, the story disappears. So now we know that what Jay was doing was what happens in a lot of wrongful convictions, and that is he had become a witness who was coerced into giving statements to support the police's case. And then 3 years ago, Jay's attorney, who defended him at the time, emailed me. And she said this is what happened. She said she had walked into a room where Jay Wiles was sitting. He's a 19-year-old a young black man, 19 years old, in Baltimore in the 1990s when things are not very good for young black men. And the prosecutor said to him, I'm going to charge you with a murder. And I'm going to charge you in the county, because Baltimore County is white, and I'm going to ask for the death penalty. So your choice is you become a state's witness, or you're going to get executed for this crime. And so she helped negotiate a plea deal in which Jay agreed to give testimony against Adnan in exchange for basically a complete immunity. He never spent a day in prison, even though, according to his own testimony, he said he helped bury the body. So Jay is now also, like, kind of the case is solved when it comes to Jay. Well, we have all this new evidence. We have the alibi witness back in the story. We have Jay Wiles. He continues to give new statements that keep changing. And we were able then in the last couple of years to get Adnan's conviction overturned twice. One court said, well, we're going to throw this conviction out because his attorney didn't fulfill her duty because she did not basically do a good job interrogating the experts on the cell phone tower evidence. The next court, the state appealed it. The state filed an appeal. We said, okay, that'll be another year and a half of his life. We win the next appeal, and the court said, we're throwing out his conviction because his lawyer didn't contact the alibi witness. And the state appealed again. And so now we are in our third appeal. We just had the hearing in November. This is the highest court in Maryland right now. That's where we are. And he will probably win one more time. I actually think Adnan's going to come home this year. Because if he wins one more time, the state has only one, they have a couple of options. Number one, they can take him to trial. Number two, they can try to go to the US Supreme Court, which is highly unlikely, which would never take this case. And number three, they can offer him a plea deal or other terms to just release him. Now, we are prepared for a trial if we need to. I just don't know how they would go back to trial with this autopsy report, with the cell tower evidence, with what we know about Jay, and with a lot of other evidence, by the way, that has been discovered by a new team of investigators that for the last 3 years have been investigating this case and are going to tell that story in a new documentary series that's going to air on HBO in a month. So, this story went from a local Baltimore state crime. You know, the prosecutor in one of the interviews, or when he spoke to the serial folks, said this was just like an average homicide case. And it was. And that actually should terrify you. That doesn't mean it was okay what happened. It just means in an average homicide case, what can go wrong for somebody, when it goes wrong, everything goes wrong, right? Because if you think about what happened in Adnan's case, if his defense counsel was competent, he could have won this trial. If the police did their job ethically and didn't coerce a witness, he probably never would have been charged. Hayes' body, you have a young woman who's been brutally murdered, and a rape kit was taken in 1999. We never understood what happened to the rape kit and why the DNA evidence wasn't tested until we got a copy of the prosecutor's file years later. And on the top of the file it said, "Hold the testing, do not test." The prosecutor in the case stopped the medical examiner, or stopped the lab, the city lab, from testing a rape kit. Why? Because they don't want to mess up this prosecution. They don't want to get a result back that's suddenly going to say, we made this arrest, we announced it on TV, and we got it wrong. If one of those actors, the police, the prosecutor, defense counsel, had done their job right, we wouldn't be 20 years out with Adnan, who was 17 then, turning 37 this year. Now, you know, a lot of people ask me, what was so special? It's really odd to me when people ask me the question, why did it become such a phenomenon? Like, well, why was it such a big deal, this case? And Sarah Koenig didn't know it was going to blow up like this. And I think Serial, the first season, has like 800 million downloads. It's insane. Why did this become a story that became a New York Times bestseller? Why is it now an HBO documentary series? Like, what was so amazing about this case? And again, the truth is really nothing. It was an ordinary wrongful conviction. Every wrongful conviction I've worked on since has had almost exactly the same elements, where the police very early on hone in on suspect. They refuse to follow leads, like the hair, like the fingerprints, like the rape kit. It has defense counsel that didn't do their job. It has prosecutors who hid evidence. But what was special about this was the storytelling. That's what set it apart. What Sarah Koenig was able to do, what I realized, and what I realized also was a failure as an advocate all these years. Now, Serial came out in 2014, so from 9/11 to 2014, me and hundreds of American and Muslim activists and advocates had been trying desperately to humanize Muslims in America, in the aftermath and in the ongoing war on terror, saying we are not the enemy. We've been here for 400 years. We are part of your community. We are your doctors. We are your lawyers. We are your shawarma makers. But we kept failing. We failed miserably because every single year the polling showed that anti-Muslim sentiment grew in this country. We were better off right after 9/11 than we are today. Today we have Muslim bans, and it's okay. Today we have Islamophobia as policy, and it's okay. So why did this happen? And I realized because what we were doing was saying, Islam is a religion of peace. Here, look at this textbook. Here, look at the... We did not tell our stories. We never told our stories as American Muslims. We did not talk about our failures, our vulnerabilities, our hopes, our dreams, our successes. We just said, this is what the religion says. Look at the book. Here's the scripture. This is the 1,500 years ago. People don't care. What Sarah Koenig did was she told the story of an American Muslim man who, if people saw him walking down the street today, would probably be scared of Adnan, even though he's like a gentle giant. Why? Because he wears that Muslim skull cap that's very common in prisons, and he has a beard. And he is not a sympathetic looking guy at all. You know, to the Western imagination, he's not. And his advocate is a woman like me who wears a scarf, and his mother wears a scarf, and his dad looks like Father Time with a beard this long. There's not a single one of us that are sympathetic looking. But what Sarah Koenig was able to do was humanize us through the power of storytelling. And I realized why we had gotten it wrong so many years. Our advocacy was failing on that issue. The other thing Sarah Koenig taught me was this. You don't need the mainstream media anymore to tell your story. you can control your narrative. I did it with my blog, I did it using social media, and then I did it with the podcast Undisclosed. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I have literally no idea how much time I have, so I want to not...
That right there, I'm going to pause that right there. She dropped a lot of gems on how they all colluded to get one person. Which brings me in the story of R. Kelly of how they all colluded to get one person. I'm going to tell you this. Tomorrow's Thursday. Tune in on Friday. I'll be back Friday. Well, I might come back tomorrow too. And we're going to talk more about this. We're going to talk more about this. About the collusion of what's going on. And we're going to talk about Sparkle. And what she know about Roshona. On that note, I thank y'all for joining me. Y'all could have been anywhere in the world. But y'all chose to rock out with the hottest guy on YouTube today. I thank y'all for coming. Love every last one of y'all. Dana J is up out of here. Y'all be blessed. Peace.
I don't like to waste time on stupid conversation. There's no profit in that.
Oh,
so if I'm around.
Wait a minute. Before I go, I got to say one thing. I did a live the other day where I destroyed Lavish Lady Talks. Well, when I found out that the Lavish Lady and the Lavish Lady 2.0 that came in my chat that I've been arguing and going back and forth with for the last 4 years that dropped off a year ago was not the same lady. So because I destroyed her publicly, I'm going to openly give her an apology, and I apologize for destroying you like that. Lavish Lady Talks. Lavish Lady Talks is not Lavish Lady and Lavish Lady 2.0 and Lavish Lady 212. That is not who that is. I always say if I do something wrong and I find out I'm wrong, I'll come public and I'll talk about it. But Lavish Lady Talks is not the same person as Lavish Lady 2.0, and Lavish Lady 212. I had to break that out there. But there's no buts for that. It is what it is. I'm a man. I hold to my word. All right? Y'all be best. And always remember, man, when you see these fake pages pop up, let the content creator know on site that that's a fake page. Don't sit back and wait. All right? Peace.
I don't like to waste time on stupid conversation. There's no profit in that. So if I'm around people that are always complaining with no solutions, then I'm wasting real estate in my brain for what I need to project. And what I project in my brain is what I project in my reality. So that real estate only has to be for evolution, things that are going to help me get where I got to go. You understand? Help me evolve. So if my conversation with you makes me stagnate, we don't have too much conversation either. I don't have no time for no stupid ass conversation.
He just wants you to come home. Just let him in.
Whatever you want, whoa, whatever you need, my heart belongs to you. Oh, whatever you need, there's nothing I won't do. Oh, whatever you want, oh, my heart belongs to you. I say whatever you need. Whatever you need, my heart belongs to you. Whatever you need, there's nothing I won't do. Whatever you want, my heart belongs to you. I say whatever you need.